Good morning and welcome to the final day of the National Press Foundation's America's Long-Term Crisis Journalism Fellowship Program. We are gathering today to sort of summarize the really high-level information that we've received over the past few days about policy and its impact on long-term care supports and services, and then a really strong slate of discussions yesterday about equity and access for Americans when it comes to caring for family members. Today, I think we'll wrap it all up nicely because as we are in the modern age, it is important for us to carefully assess the role and the potential of technology and innovation in supporting families in caring for their relatives. So we're joined today by three speakers who are going to help us do that. We'll start with Anthony Nunez. He is the founder of INF Care, and he'll tell us more about that. All of the bios, by the way, are on NPR.org, or NPR, I'm sorry. Wrong career, nationalpress.org. So please read up about all of our speakers. And then Robert Felgar and Nermin Selamik are from RISE Mobility, and they're going to tell you about technological innovations that are designed to support not only people who are dealing with the challenges of dementia and infirmity, but also for their caregivers. So let's start, please, by welcoming Anthony Nunez.
Morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone here. My name is Anthony. Along my journey of trying to solve the problem that my family experienced, I've picked up a few titles. I'm currently the Commissioner on Aging for Arlington County. I'm also on the board of directors of the Village Network. And given my passion and knowledge in robotics, I also picked up the nickname Mr. Roboto along the way. So I've worn many hats, but my focus has really remained the same over the years. I've been at this problem since 2011. That's when I officially started, although some work kind of started before that. For me, it's personal. My family experienced it firsthand. And today I want to share with you a little bit about my story that I haven't shared anywhere else before. And then I'm going to share a little bit about the technologies we've developed, including the robot and where we are today and how we got there. So for me, it was all about, why did I get into this? And the answer is, it was my grandmother. When I was growing up, she escaped World War II when Hitler was invading Czechoslovakia. She escaped and came to Ellis Island, came to America with nothing, completely started over on her life. And I found her as a great inspiration as a child. She worked very hard. She taught me never to give up. She taught me how to, deal with setbacks. And who better than someone like her, and the things she went through. And so what I did is, I took a lot of inspiration in my personal life from her. And I applied that to my work as I would, get a little bit older. But as I, grew up and I got into high school, my grandmother fell down. She lived alone, out of state, away from us. And, we had bought her technology to try to help her stay in her home. And the technology did not work. It was a very reactive technology. So she fell and it let us know. A little late. And unfortunately, that fall led to her losing her independence. And she ended up moving into our home where, as a child, I saw firsthand both ends of this problem. I saw my grandmother, who I cared very much about, who was fiercely independent. I watched her slowly lose her independence. And then I watched my mom, raising two boys, be her primary caregiver. And that left a huge impact on me. And later, as I would go through college, I would study engineering because I had a passion for building things, creating things. I loved engineering. And about 3/4 of the way through in the university, I was building robots in my dorm all the time. I would sneak into some of the older upper level, I should say, classes in robotics because they wouldn't let me in when you're a freshman back then. You could only get into a robotics class if you were a senior, which didn't really make much sense to me. So I'd sneak in and go back to my dorm and build robots. But my third year in, I actually caught the eye of the university, and they ended up sponsoring and paying for a robotic project that I was building to help individuals with disabilities. And that's where it really clicked, because when I got done that project, I realized I wanted to build a robot to solve the problem that my family went through. And as I would move forward in my career, I went out and got a job. I would learn a lot more about that problem. I would learn that we weren't alone. That there's millions of other Americans and people even worldwide that are experiencing the exact same problem we had. And so, I went through and I got a job out in the field, working with a government contractor. I found myself juggling multiple projects, but nothing was filling that void. No matter how many times I would come in early, stay late, take on more projects, nothing was ever satisfying me. I found myself incomplete. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up making a very tough decision in 2010, and I left that position. I was growing very rapidly in there. I was getting out of the engineering and more on the business side, and I left. And I said, I want to go ahead and solve this problem, and I jumped off and really went at it full time. And so from my perspective, there were three things that needed to be solved here. And I would learn as I kind of roll forward that these three problems are inherent into how the system, which is over 100 years old, doing the same thing for the last 100 plus years, is how it operates. And so for me, it's the high cost of care. Now, when I got involved in this in the DC metro area, it was $100 for 1 day of care, minimum, $100. That's more than doubled now, and it's not showing any signs of slowing down. So high cost of care is really one of the key things for me. The other thing, which is what I saw personally with my family, is that reactive nature of care. It's always reacting. It's telling me about things after the fact. Oh, she fell. Okay, I would have liked to know what's going on prior to that fall so I could have helped prevent it. And the final thing is really the infrequency of care. And so, in my family, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. Both of my parents were working, blue collar. We went to schools. My parents worked hard to get us to decent schools. But the cost of care was so expensive when my grandmother needed it, we were unable to get it as frequently as she needed it when she was in our home. And so we would try to supplement it as family members. But again, I was going to school. My parents were working. It's very difficult. And in the end, the only person that suffers is the older adult. And that bothered me. And so that's why I developed Rudy. Rudy was an autonomous robot that was designed to be a companion and someone for the older adult to be able to lean on emotionally, to be able to lean on for assistance, to be able to lean on to really foster that sense of independence. Now, it was a bold mission. Because I said, now here I am, I'm going to invent an autonomous robot, a very advanced technology, but I want it to be easy to use for older adults. And when I would tell people, other stakeholders like investors back then, they looked at me like I was crazy. You want to invent a robot for older adults and you want it to be easy to use? They looked at me like it was impossible. But they weren't the first people to doubt me. I had to get money to start building this idea. I initially used some of my money I had saved up from my job, but that ran out pretty quickly. So I went for a government grant. And I said, I'm going to build 3 robots. I need $150,000, and it's going to take me a year to build. And it's going to be an autonomous robot that moves around the home, and it's going to do these different things. They came back and they rejected me. And they said it was impossible to build 3 robots in a year with $150,000. Again, not the first time someone told me I couldn't do something. So I took that as a challenge. And I went out and I raised $80,000 from local angel investors in the DC area, which were not easy to find. And I built 5 robots in 6 months. And those robots were focused on a couple key things. One was they needed to have a companion. The older adult needed a companion, someone to talk to, something to talk back to them, and something to understand what they're going through, and something to relay that information back to a human. Because I always believed that a human needs to be in the loop. I'm not about completely replacing a human, but we have to be realistic. There's not enough humans to serve all the older adults we're going to have. And there's going to be less and less of those humans. And so beyond that, I needed to build something that would remind them and make sure they take their medication. I needed to do something that would help them reduce the risk of fall, exactly what my grandmother would have needed. And then I wanted to have a portal for humans to be able to check in. And those are the things that Rudy set out to do. He set out to do cooperative exercises to keep that older adult active without increasing the risk of fall. Very challenging. And one of the things that we've done different from the very beginning that no other robotics company can say is that we spent all of our time out in the field versus in a lab. We clocked 30,000 hours out in the field at the last time we were clocking it, and we stopped after that. Just to give you a note, there's 8,760 hours in a year. So we spent a lot of time out there. Anywhere an older adult touchdown, adult daycare, independent living, assisted living, home care, community centers, anywhere they were, our robot was there in the DC metro area. And what we were doing was learning. We were learning and iterating our design as we were going forward. And finally, in 2017, we reached a point where we really understood that we were ready to actually start launching this into formal betas. And so what you see here is the beta 1 model. Right? There's some features about it that aren't the sleekest and the sharpest, right? I'll be the first to admit. But we had a beta 2, a beta 3, and a beta 4, and even a pre-production model that we never allowed to be seen. But this beta model got a lot of miles on it. But along the way, as I was taking Rudy out more, I realized that Rudy was actually getting me more exposure. I found myself talking to the United Nations on aging. I found myself at multiple conferences in Silicon Valley and other locations, and I even got to the White House to meet President Obama. So it was kind of like a dual relationship between Rudy and myself and my co-founder, where we were getting out more and learning more about not just the problem, but also kind of the whole environment and the market as a whole. Now, as we were doing this, I was doing a lot of different interviews. And this particular quote actually caught me the other day because it was kind of ironic. I'd said something about our flexibility and our willingness to really adapt to market change quickly. Little did I know, 3 years later, this would be put to the ultimate test, because something I could have never planned for would happen. And that was, while we were touring manufacturers here in Virginia to fulfill $4 million worth of orders for Rudy after our successful paid trials, everything shut down the next month. So here we were, a hardware company with, a robot to deliver our software, unable to build a robot. A very tough situation to be in, because at that moment, it was the biggest test of, did we really want to do this? Were we serious about trying to solve this problem? Because it would have been much easier to quit and say, well, we tried, it's out of our hand, we couldn't do nothing. Well, we did the opposite. We actually did the most difficult thing we could do, which was separate the software from the actual hardware, spent several weeks doing this, lost about half my staff in the process because that's how intense it was. The best way I could compare it to you, it's kind of like that Hell Week for the Navy SEALs, except it was Hell Week for this robotics company. The hours were just insane. The having to push through things that we had never foreseen coming up or ever having to be done was really pushing us to our limit. But in the end, we succeeded. We were able to get all the software, which was basically the heart and soul of our robot, and we were able to get it off the robot and onto a commercially available tablet. And that was important to us because we said, well, we can't be stuck here. We don't know how long these lockdowns are going to last. We need to get out of the hardware game right now. And so Rudy went on to the back burner. That was a tough pill to swallow for me, I'll be honest. I was extremely passionate and set on having this robot come through. And there was no path for it. We forged our path. And I am very thankful for my co-founder, Carla Rodriguez, because she is the one that really pushed for this pivot. And she is the one that really kind of pushed it through for us. Now, as we got on the other side of that, we realized that, okay, the solution's a little bit different. It's now operating on a tablet. We don't have this mobile device moving around. What are we going to do? We need to vet this, and we need to vet it in a more condensed timeline. So what we did is, knowing the market, we went out and we worked with Medicaid, and then we worked with HUD-funded independent living facilities. Now, if you know anything about Medicaid or HUD-funded independent living facilities, these are typically low-income older adults, very low tech literacy, and some of the most challenging older adults to manage when it comes to care. And so these are areas where technology companies avoid. Nobody goes to test their technology with Medicaid. They go with Medicare, which is a little easier. We went straight to the most challenging population of older adults, and we gave them the tablet with our software. And what we found is not only were we able to drive KPIs or results for the older adults, like cognitive performance, memory, reduced ER visits, medication adherence, driving that up, we found out that we were able to obtain a lot of data on their daily patterns that we could use to help stay ahead of issues. Taking me all the way back to when I started this reactive nature of care, we now had the ability to be proactive. And that's when we developed the Wellness Concierge Service, which is a blend of really this advanced technology where we've taken out of the robots, so we have AI, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and we blend it with humans. And we incorporate activities and exercises and things that are very important for this segment. This is not for a younger generation. This is very focused for 55 plus. So everything we do, the ease of use, the activities, the cognitive performance activities, the memory exercises, the reminders, the conversations that our software has with them is all geared to 55 plus adults. Understanding their needs, driving results for them. That's what it's all about. And every time I developed something, whether it was the robot or this tablet, myself and my co-founder, we ask ourselves, would this have been useful for our families? Would this have been useful for my grandmother? And the answer was a hands down yes. Now, what we wanted to do was, prior to the pandemic, we actually were relying on other caregivers from home care agencies. What we wanted to do was have a little bit more control on how that process took place. So we pulled it back, and then we created our own support staff, where we were able to tap into a lot of the talent that's out there and leverage that with our system, giving us more control, more oversight, and more ability to drive results for older adults and really evolve the company at the pace that it needs to go. Because I can tell you what you see here today is not what's coming down the pike already. We have a lot of things in the works. We wanted to put AI to work for older adults. And so we do that in a couple ways. We do that, one, in understanding the older adults' patterns in a variety of non-medical areas. Now, the best way to think about our solution is it's the only alternative to having someone live in the home with you 24/7. If you had a family member and you were an older adult, you had a family member living in the home or a paid caregiver, they would notice that you got up late today. They would notice you're not eating breakfast. They would notice you're in a bad mood. They would notice that maybe you're not hydrating or you're complaining about pain. These things are very important to pick up. Today, we don't pick them up. We don't pick them up until they actually land you up in the ER as an older adult. And then we're trying to backtrack. And that's very problematic, not only for the older adult, but also very challenging for the people who are tasked with taking care of the older adult. It's like handing you an onion and you're trying to peel back the layers and find out where the core of this issue lies. What our system does with this AI is it allows us to know where that core of the issue lies, where it originates, and when it originates. And it allows our staff, given the very frequent nature of our visits, to address them before they spiral out of control. Now that's very key, because if this does not go to market for all of us as we age, we're going to be rushed through the most critical time of our aging cycle. That early stage when we are the most independent and when the most cost savings can be realized. We will be rushed through that. But I am determined that that will not happen to us, and that will not happen to any more older adults. And that's why we really wanted to put AI here to work, and we tap into generative AI as well. We take a lot of the information that we learn about the older adult, and we provide influence and guidance. And so we kind of see ourselves as influencers here to the older adult population. We're influencing them and helping them stay on track. And our support team does that, but it bases it on data. No more guessing. No more showing up to your home 3 days after you fell, seeing a scar on your face as an older adult and saying, oh, okay, well, what can we do now? This is about addressing things before they become an issue, before they become an ER visit and an adverse event. And doing it from data. Knowing when to increase the level of care is also extremely important, because we know at some point you're going to need more care. But with our system, we can know when that level of care needs to take place. We don't need to guess anymore. And that's really important. It's really built into our name what we're about, right? INF Care. It's all about making care more inclusive. Just because you don't have a lot of money does not mean you shouldn't have the best type of care while you're at home. It doesn't mean that we can't find a way to nurture you while you're at home and encourage you to be able to remain independent. Because to be honest, for an older adult, when you reach 55 plus, and I've seen this because again, I've spent thousands of hours with older adults in their homes. When you reach that age, yes, you're retired, you don't have a full-time job, but you have many things on your schedule. And you have a lot of things that you're thinking about, you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Your personal wellness typically takes a back seat to those issues. And that is very problematic, because when that happens, that is when issues start to arise, they're not caught, and then you land up in the ER and you lose your independence. So we want to make sure that we foster that freedom, that we encourage it, that we support it, that we're that invisible net. We're not going to be that intrusive person or solution that's there bugging you, telling you what to do. We're more of that encouraging voice on your shoulder, helping you stay independent, and being that invisible net. If something happens, that we catch it and help bring it to your attention and help get you back on track. That's what I would have wanted for my grandmother, and that's what we want for every older adult. We want them to remain independent, and we want them to stay in their home and stay active and keep living their lives, because that's what's most important to the people that love them the most. My name's Anthony. Thank you.
I think we're a little short on time, so a couple of weeks ago I was here at the Age-Tech Summit, and I think his name is Jim Vanderhei, the founder of Politico. He gave a wonderful speech, and he was giving out his free book, Smart Brevity. You ever heard of it? Anyways, I recommend it if you haven't. So I will try to practice a few of his tips and stay to the point, so you've got time at the end to ask questions. I'm one of the owners of Raz Mobility. We formed Raz Mobility in 2017. I formed it with my partner, Nerman, who will be speaking right after me. Initially, we were focused on selling mobile devices for people with various types of disabilities. We were particularly focused on people who were blind, and we were selling those devices to state government programs across the country. In 2019, my partner was going back home to visit family in Germany. He was in an airport, and he said, I have an idea. Let's develop a cell phone for seniors with cognitive decline, in particular dementia. And there had not been a product like this yet on the market, except for a small company in Australia that was selling something, a device that we didn't feel executed particularly well in their home market, and that's it. And we decided to give it a shot, and we launched the Raz Memory cell phone in 2020. The whole concept behind the phone is very simple. It's got a very specific purpose. If someone has Alzheimer's dementia, as that disease progresses, it's inevitable that they will eventually not be able to use a standard phone. Okay, so the family will take it away for some reason at some point in time as their disease progresses. At that point in time, they won't be able to stay connected with family, right? They'll depend entirely on person-to-person visits. So we wanted to develop something that would allow the senior to continue to communicate, to continue to use a mobile device, past the point at which they can no longer use a standard device, whether it was a smartphone or whether it was a basic feature phone. So you can see what the phone looks like right there from the perspective of the senior. And so we launched this phone in 2020, and it immediately started to sell. We didn't have to market it very much. We didn't spend much on, we had no distribution. We simply literally put it on our website, and people started to buy it. So we knew we had something that was in demand, and since then we've been developing it consistently and improving the product. Now, there are three sort of background factors that drove us to launch the phone and why it has done quite well. The first factor is the prevalence of dementia. I'll talk about each briefly. The second factor is the desire to age in place, in other words, stay at home for as long as possible. And the third factor is loneliness. Okay, so I'm sure that these have been discussed a fair bit over the last 2 days, but I'll go over it at a high level. First, with respect to dementia itself, you probably know that there are about 6.7 Americans with Alzheimer's dementia today. This is from the Alzheimer's Association report in 2023. That represents 1 in 9 seniors. Some say 1 in 10, some say 1 in 9, but around there. If you're 85 and older, your chances of having Alzheimer's dementia is 1 in 3, okay? If you're a 45-year-old woman, to kind of personalize it a little bit, if you're a 45-year-old woman, your lifetime chance of getting Alzheimer's dementia is 20%. If you're a 45-year-old man, your lifetime chance of getting Alzheimer's dementia is 10%. And don't feel good about that, men. The only reason it's lower for men than women, or at least the primary reason, is men don't live as long, okay? There are about 11 million family members who provide an estimated 8 billion hours of care to people with Alzheimer's or other dementia. This was in 2022. And with respect to aging at home, we know that 88% of Americans who were surveyed between the ages of 50 and 80 have indicated that it's very important for them to age in their home. And the American Medical Association has said that even if you have dementia, most Americans prefer aging in place, and the AMA believes that there are significant benefits to aging in place for as long as possible. So those are kind of two of the factors that led to our phone. And then the third factor is loneliness, okay? Social isolation is a major factor for Alzheimer's dementia. It increases the risk of dementia by about 50%. So if you want to avoid getting Alzheimer's dementia, one of the things you can do is develop significant or meaningful personal relationships. Avoiding loneliness and social isolation is also important to reducing your odds of getting premature death generally. So it's actually loneliness and social isolation are about as important, for example, as things like exercise and not smoking and obesity. It's on that order of magnitude. And just Monday, JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association Neurology, found for the first time that people who are lonely have a 37% greater likelihood of being diagnosed with Parkinson's. So there's no doubt that loneliness is a significant factor in leading to dementia and other health impacts. And also in the progression of the disease itself, right? So it increases your odds of getting it and also the progression once you do get it. And with respect to the number of adults who are socially isolated, it's 25%. So about 25% of adults over 65 say that they're socially isolated. So those are sort of the factors that we addressed and that the phone addresses, and why the phone became as popular as it is. Now, my partner is going to talk about the phone itself and how it works.
My name is Nermin Selimik, and as Robert mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Rise Mobility. And we started this endeavor in 2019 to address this challenge for seniors with dementia. Robert shared data, how many seniors are suffering from dementia, and I think, my grandmother did experience dementia over the last 7 to 8 years of her life, vascular dementia, and it was back in the 80s, and I wish, we had something like the Rise Memory cell phone at that time. And I'm sure many of you have experienced, with your parents or grandparents, even seniors who, without cognitive decline, there is some confusion when they are using smartphones, correct? I'm very fortunate. My mother is 88 years old. She's still able to use her iPhone, but I'm her tech support 24/7, correct? She would change something inadvertently. She's very good at using it. She does her own posts on Facebook. She knows exactly that if she's communicating with my brother who doesn't have an iPhone, they will use WhatsApp for a video call, versus when she's communicating with my wife who's using an iPhone, they will use it on FaceTime. All of that is working out. But then if she needs to add a contact, if she needs to make a change, that's where the problems kick in, or doing some of these changes that at that moment will make the phone almost unusable, she will do it inadvertently. Now, accelerate that by a major multiplier for a senior suffering from dementia. They will not be able to add a single contact. They will not be able to differentiate the different icons on the phone. They will be changing things all the time. Is it even the basic stuff, putting the phone in the do not disturb mode, correct? Changing the ringer or the call volume. So a regular smartphone cannot be used by seniors with dementia. And that's exactly where we realized there is no phone that will support such individuals. There are certain phones out there that have a specific level of adaptation for seniors, but not nearly enough to support seniors with dementia or other types of cognitive declines. Some of you might have heard it. There is the Lively phone, which offers like a flip phone or a simplified smartphone. They are sold through Best Buy, or maybe the name Jitterbug would ring a bell. And it is popular throughout a certain part of the senior population who still have proper cognitive skills. And Apple did something very interesting this year with iOS 17. They introduced the assistive access, correct, which provides a completely different user interface on an iPhone. It literally looks completely different than what we are used on our iPhones. But again, it is a simplification that goes only to a specific step. So let's say I'm considering that maybe now using for my mom, because she could still access Facebook, all the different things, media, she could place her online orders and so on, but there would be less of the other stuff that could be confusing her, and certain things could be further limited. So the next step is, it's about the ease of use, and that's exactly where the Rise Memory cell phone excels, having seniors with dementia in mind. And that was also our starting point throughout this endeavor, and it is a journey, correct? Robert mentioned we launched in 2020. actually exactly the week of as the shutdowns were happening throughout the country. And we were still, it was one of the last days in our office where we were sitting next to each other in person, and we were discussing what to do. Correct? How will we support our other activities? What will we do with the new product? And we decided it would be actually a real test for the product. Correct? There is no in-person interaction to present a phone to someone. It is online. It is being sold online. The concept is also, it is not only the phone in the senior's hands. It is the other part of the equation, which is the remote manage capability. So it is for me that I can manage the phone for the user from anywhere in the country. And that was exactly what was happening throughout the pandemic, correct? Many seniors, they were trapped in assisted living facilities or at their homes, and their children were somewhere else. So clearly, it was a very good proposition at that time, and it was an excellent proof of concept because our beta testing got cut short since we didn't have access anymore to our beta testers as the pandemic started. So ease of use, simplicity, everything can be customized. It is about customizing the user experience. There are users who react very well on seeing the photograph of the contact. There are others who react very well simply on the name and so on. All of that can be customized as an example. Is it also the ringtone? All aspects of the phone can be customized, and all of that can be done remotely in real time by one or multiple caregivers. So let's say I can be the caregiver, but the caregiver can be also my wife if I'm not available, so that she can make changes or check on the status of the phone and the user, because it becomes an interface with the user as well. It is about making sure that seniors remain connected and that they retain the ability to communicate. It is not only about the emergency call if they don't feel well, if they are experiencing other issues. It is about continuous communication. And what typically happens for seniors with dementia is that communication is decreasing over time because of their inability to use the phone, or in case when they are using the phone in some very creative ways, if they are placing too frequent calls, if they are calling 911 repeatedly, the only option for the family is to take away the phone from them. And that is further accelerating the loneliness. But there are many challenges when you have a senior suffering from dementia and they need to use a phone. So the fact that they are locked into this single environment will prevent them making some changes to the phone and making sure that the phone is always ready to use. The fact that there are pictures instead of just listing of contacts and large photographs and so on will make it easy for them to recognize, and it is just at the press of a button they can call. But then it is also, they need to remember to charge. One of the major challenges, believe it or not, is making sure that phone is charged, correct? And we developed almost, it's a 4-line of defense, helping the user and the caregiver making sure that the phone is charged. The user can receive a reminder when they are supposed to charge the phone. If they don't react at that time and the battery percentage is further reducing, the caregiver can receive a text message saying that the battery is below a certain percentage. The caregiver can see at any time in the remote manage app called RazCare what is the battery percentage of the phone, and they can interact with the user. And last but not least, every time when the user connects the phone to the charger, If it's connected properly, it will announce that the phone is charging, regardless if it's just connected with the charging cable or through a wireless charger. And it makes a major difference. It makes a major difference. As we were rolling out these different features, we could see that the feedback from caregivers that the scenario, the phone, was turned off because the battery wasn't charged, that's not happening anymore. A big topic, and I don't know if that was on the agenda throughout the last few days for you, is the vulnerability to fraud for seniors. Correct? It is tens of billions of dollars every year. And now imagine all of that for a person suffering from dementia. Correct? Someone is reaching out to them over the phone and so on and so on. They can, spin many stories very, very successfully. The other part is also the very annoying telemarketing calls and so on. And we have very successfully addressed such challenges where the user can be only called by either contacts or additional phone numbers, as an example, the doctor's office, who have been added to the allowed list. No other calls will be able to reach the user. So it is a very solid line of defense, making sure that they are not receiving calls from people who shouldn't be calling them. I did mention repetitive calling, or calling in the middle of the night. Repetitive calling of 911 is also one of the major issues. And we introduced an additional concierge emergency service where the call will be answered by the concierge service. And at the same time, the person answering that call will receive additional information about the user, correct? That they are a dementia patient, if they have any other medical condition, who are their emergency contacts, do they live in an assisted living facility or at home? So all of them, that will help them to determine, is it a real emergency? They can involve the caregivers if needed. And if it's a real emergency, based on this additional amount of information, the response can be actually significantly better. Typical behaviors for seniors with dementia is that they will wake up in the middle of the night and there is this burst of energy and they would like to call, correct? So they will start calling their family, their friends. So we developed a feature there where it can be actually customized. What are the hours during which the user is not able to place calls, and they will hear actually an announcement in the voice of their caregiver telling them, Grandpa, it's 2 a.m, I love you, I would love to talk to you, but please go back to bed and I will call you tomorrow. And that can be customized for every single phone number. So let's say if I'm the primary caregiver, I would still like to make sure that that person can reach me, even if it's at 3 a.m, because it could be an emergency. Screen locking, correct? Locked screen. It's a major issue to use Face ID or type in a PIN for someone with dementia. So we have either a continuous availability of the home screen with the contacts, or an option, yes, it will dim, it will lock, but as soon as there is movement, the phone will be available to them. And last but not least on this short list of issues that we are presenting today is the power button. So many users will turn off the phone and they will forget that they turned off the phone for a specific reason, correct? And then the next time when their children or someone else comes to visit them, they're saying, oh, you didn't call me, or I couldn't call you, I couldn't use the phone. So that is also an option that can be used to disable the power button. As mentioned, number 2, of some of the core principles is that everything is customizable. So the caregiver can figure out over time what is the best app for the senior. Seniors, there are, let's say, two other challenges that we identified that prevent seniors from using regular smartphones or even a flip phone, correct? We have seen in many cases what was the previous device that customers used, and it was a flip phone. And it was an attempt by the family, okay, mom is not able to use her iPhone anymore, let's try with a flip phone. And I see here, we have here, a lot of younger folks who might have not used the flip phone. And I can tell you something, using a flip phone is not convenient, correct? It might appear as simple, it's not convenient. To reach a contact, you need to press one button, then you need to keep scrolling, or you need to enter the initials or something like that. It's not convenient at all. So that attempt typically fails. But what are the two other challenges the senior experience and that so that they're not able to use a smartphone? It is low vision, correct? So low vision, regardless how much you magnify the text, the characters, or the display on a smartphone, it won't be enough. And there is a low vision mode on the RAS Memories cell phone that can be customized even for the size of the characters. They're almost 2 inch tall, and then the color combinations, correct? Because there is a certain color blindness that kicks in with the low vision that can be completely customized. The next one is hand tremor. Hand tremor simply as age related, or as an outcome of a stroke, correct? So there is no possibility for such users really to successfully control their hand to tap onto the smaller icons. So the RAS Memory cell phone has significantly enlarged buttons that can be tapped. So it is about simplicity for the user, correct? Make it as easy to use as possible. It is a tap of a button for the contact. It is clearly, when there is an incoming call, answer or decline, and so on. For the caregiver, there is a plethora of options available through a mobile app that's available in the App Store or on Google Play. So the RAS Care app does allow the caregiver or multiple caregivers for one and the same device, or one caregiver then for multiple devices, to have a full insight into the device. Is the device turned on? What is the wireless reception of the device? What is the remaining battery power on the device? Where is the device? And hopefully the user, as long as they have their phone with them, where are they located, correct? What is the volume that's set up? What is the call history, correct? Did grandpa communicate? Did he make calls? Who is calling him? Who is he calling? The ability to manage contacts. You can see here, this is how the caregiver would see it in the RAS Care app, and they can change contacts at any time, and it will be reflected on the RAS Memory cell phone right away. The caregiver can also place video calls to the user, so the phone supports phone calls and video calls, yet these are not calls through, let's say, FaceTime, but it is through our system to make sure that no one else can video call the senior except the caregiver and the contacts that the caregiver selected, who are allowed to place video calls to the user.
I'm going to jump in here because Robert, why don't you and Anthony come and join us up front, and we can continue the conversation and at least get in maybe 10 minutes of questions. Please have a seat there, and each of you take a mic.
Thanks.
Yeah, there you go. First of all, are there any questions that anybody would like to ask? As we're thinking about maybe if there are any questions, I'd like to maybe pose the first one to the three of you. I think in many of our conversations that we've had services and supports that allow people with dementia to retain a measure of their personhood. So in other words, the caregiver is juggling so many different considerations, but many of them really want to do the best for their relatives, and they want to make them still feel like they have some agency. So can each of you briefly just tell us the role of what your technology is offering in terms of helping both the caregiver and the patient move forward with dignity? Anthony, would you go first?
Sure. I think that's exactly what we've done with our solution is, the data helps the caregiver understand the older adult status. It provides a level of oversight and peace of mind for the family because we do share a lot of that data with family and physicians. But for the older adult, it's most important because we're not taking away their independence. There's a lot of technologies that will monitor the older adult, and I feel and I've seen behaviors with older adults in those kind of monitoring devices that you're kind of taking the role of the older adult and you're flipping it, right? They're no longer the parent, they're kind of like the child now. And that can be, something that negatively affects the older adult. So we focus on really keeping the older adult in charge and independent by being kind of like that background support.
Okay, is this working? Yes, it is. Okay. So I think the way that the RAS Memory cell phones help is very straightforward. It simply helps the parent or the senior and the caregiver, usually the adult child, stay connected, right? And that's especially important when they live in different cities. For example, I live in Washington, D.C., or this area. My mother lives in Montreal, right? That's very common. Ermin's mother lives in Germany. And the ability to stay connected is a huge benefit, not only to the senior, but to the caregiver or adult child.
Yeah, I think it's overall about the independence, correct? It is about the independence and staying connected. Clearly, any limitation to the ability to communicate will also limit the senior's independence and the ability to continue living the life the way that they would like, correct? So is it then, in the absence of that, is it a negative impact due to loneliness or just, based on the senior's dissatisfaction with the fact, let's say if you're talking about our product, it's about the fact that they don't have a phone anymore, correct? And I can't even imagine that conversation that a child is having with their parent and telling them that they will take away the phone from them. So it's making sure that they have all the resources that they are used to, regardless of their advanced age or the health condition.
Hi, I'm Amber Castillo. I'm from Epicenter NYC, a local news outlet. And I'm curious, particularly for Anthony, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, what are other ethical questions that you ask yourself while designing? And as more of these kinds of products enter the market, what ethical questions do you think manufacturers and designers should be asking? What kinds of ethical considerations?
Great question. For this demographic, the first one is privacy. How are we going to use the data, right? Because AI needs data to function, right? That's kind of like its power source, right? It's its fuel. It needs data. So what are we going to do with that data? How are we going to use it? For us, it's about always keeping the older adult in the driver's seat. They're in charge of their data. We're not selling it or sharing it unless they say share it with my physician or my family member. So we keep them in the driver's seat. I think that's a huge consideration. The other thing I would say would be, how you implement it. Is it for the benefit of that older adult, or are you just trying to run up, a revenue stream for your business? Being the fact that I've been in the home care space since 2011, I've seen a lot of different businesses pop up that, have revenue streams that aren't really benefiting the older adult first. So I think those are kind of two of the ethical things that should be considered as more products are developed with AI, particularly for older adults.
Any other questions? Let's go over here first and then come back to you, Andy.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Liz Howard from WEAA, Morgan State University. I am very impressed with your technology and innovation. When I came along, I'm actually a student caregiver, and we didn't have all of this technology when I came on. They treated me like I was, I guess, the humpback of Notre Dame, trying to run away from all the victimization of the long-term health care. I just want to ask you, Anthony, how did you come up with this robot? And were you a kid when you started this, or how did you get into all of this? It's fascinating.
Yeah, well, you know, my grandmother was the inspiration, but ultimately I knew that I wanted to create something that would have a physical presence, right? And it had to be the closest thing to having a human in the home. And so being able to move around, being able to do physical activities, it would allow us to accomplish a lot of the things that we would want from a human in the home. And so that's kind of how I came up with it. You know, about when I came up with it, you know, I think it really kind of hit me in that third year of college is when, you know, that project was funded, that I, you know, kind of hit me. So, well, you know what, I could actually use robotics to solve the issue with my grandmother.
It's fabulous, proactive. It's great.
Andy, let's take one more question from Andy.
Andy Richards, NJ Advanced Media. My question is for the gentleman with the RAS Mobility cell phone. I had to take away my mom's cell phone because it was honestly too complicated for her to operate. She also has dementia. And so I was Googling because I'm like, well, I'm going to get this right now. And I see that you have a contract with T-Mobile. And I'm just wondering, because you have the caregiver also being able to interact with the senior, is there an additional charge? Is this a cost-effective thing? Like, will I be able to afford this, is my question.
Excellent question. So the phone is actually sold as an unlocked phone. So let's say, like, if you go to the Apple store and you buy your iPhone, and you will say, I will decide later who will be my wireless provider, correct? There is a partnership option where we are offering a very attractive plan, but the customer can decide, correct? So let's say if you would like to add the RAS Memory cell phone for your mom to your existing AT&T or Verizon account, you can do that. So the phone is unlocked. There is no carrier commitment related with the phone. And for the ongoing service, there is no additional charge, correct? So it is a one-time purchase price that you pay, and all of these services, they're available to you as long as the phone is active.
Great.
I just have to say that this conversation has really brought me back to a place of remembering the issue of treating all of us with dignity and giving us all the best possible opportunity to age well and age with grace and humanity. And so when we think about technology and innovation, it's really a good opportunity to think about ways to use it for the good of all of us. And when we consider the numbers and the demographics about aging in America, I feel a lot better knowing that there are people like Anthony Nunez, Robert Felgar, and Nerman Selamik who are really working on solutions to these challenges. So let's take this opportunity right now to thank all of them for joining us.